Welcome to homework.
Okay, so now we are going to examine a hypothetical situation. We are a conservationist. We are looking at some potential species of frog, and we are going to look at which factors, which potential threats would we consider being environmental abiotic conditions and human activities. So we need to consider which factors would either fall into those two categories that we mentioned. So before we proceed, we need to define and understand what these two categories are so we can categorize the options laid out in front of us. So the first category is abiotic conditions. So we need to understand what abiotic means. Now, a good rule of thumb in the English language is if you have a familiar term and a is before it, that is usually a negative, meaning it is referring to the opposite. So abiotic is non-living. So it's non-living, meaning it is most likely going to be environmental if it's abiotic. So some examples of abiotic conditions would be temperature and light. So we can think of temperature, light. We can think of water conditions that could be an abiotic condition. Atmosphere, so air quality, all of these things can be considered abiotic conditions because they're environmental and they aren't relating to a living creature. So that's how we can think of abiotic in this context. So, and then also, we're looking at conditions that would be classified as being human activities, right? Which is pretty self-explanatory. Human activities being caused by humans. So I'll just write human, just so we have these two conditions for reference for this question, because that is absolutely essential. So we have a few different conditions brought before us, and we're going to look at each one and see if it can be classified in either of the two categories. So the first is climate change. So climate change, we'll write in green. So I'll just put climate. And they'll use the symbol delta, which is commonly referring to change in scientific nomenclature. So climate change. This is both abiotic and potentially human caused. So this definitely fits those criteria. Actually fits both of them. So perfect. So another option that we are seeing is going to be habitat destruction. So habitat destruction. So let's write that in blue for now. So habitat destruction. This can definitely fit into human being caused by humans, human activities. It also could potentially be abiotic or biotic. So we only need to classify it as human before we move on to the other conditions that we can choose from. Aggressive predators. So we have aggressive predators. I'll just write PRED for predator. Those are biotic, and that's not human caused in the strict sense of the word. So we can put an X there. That is not good. We also have an option for exotic species. Exotic species. So the words, we'll write that in black as well. We'll just write exotic for the shorthand. So exotic species, is that abiotic? No, because it's a living thing. Can it be caused by humans? Well, yes, we have to define exotic species. Well, let's erase that. We have to define exotic species in the context of a species that is brought into a habitat by humans. So that, of course, is a human activity. So that one meets the criteria. So climate change, habitat destruction, exotic species. those meet the criteria. So are there any answer options that contain those three? So if we look at option A, we see aggressive predators. That discredits that. We see sparse availability of food in option C, which, again, that isn't necessarily caused by humans. So let's write this. Sparse availability of food. So let's just write sparse food. This can be caused by many different factors, specifically competition amongst other predators or animals that eat the same sort of food. So this doesn't really meet either of those criteria as well. So option C, we can't count. So let's look at option D. What are the conditions that are listed in option D? We see climate change, which is good. We see exotic species, which is good. And overhunting in its habitat. No, this is not going to be meeting both of those categories because overhunting doesn't really apply to frogs from humans hunting frogs, and if it's overhunting of other animals taking out their prey, that would not be abiotic. So that does not apply either. So what option are we left with? We're left with option B. The frog is at risk from climate change, which we've verified meets those criteria. We have exotic species, which is a human activity related. So that meets the criteria. And then we also have possible habitat destruction, which again meets that criteria. So the answer option would be B because all of the conditions listed fit into the two categories, which were outlined as being abiotic and human activities. So answer